So, hello everyone. My name's Emily Flores. I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Aid here at DigiPen, and I'm going to be talking about some first steps with financial aid, how to get started, some helpful tools that will be available for you as well as you're getting started with this process. And we'll also look at some specific scholarships that are available to our population for this WANIC session as well today. So first things first are your first steps for being evaluated for financial aid. First thing to do would be to apply to DigiPen. So just as Niall detailed those admissions application details, getting in that admissions application with those elements would be your first step. Second step would be to complete your FAFSA at studentaid.gov. Now, technically, the FAFSA can be completed at any point once it's available for the year. So if you haven't been admitted to DigiPen yet and you want to get started, you want to start checking off some of these things from your list, you can go ahead and submit your FAFSA. And then once you're admitted to DigiPen, we will be able to receive that FAFSA once you're in our system. And then after that, applying for DigiPen institutional scholarships would be your next step. So once we receive your FAFSA, our office will evaluate your eligibility for aid and prepare an initial financial aid offer for the year for you. Any additional requirements at that point will be assigned to the student in the self-service portal, which is sort of the main point where students can go to see what aid they're awarded, what additional documents they need to submit, what is on their checklist for things to complete for our office. So that's really kind of a one-stop shop for all of that information once the student's admitted as well. And then another thing, important thing to keep in mind as you're going through these first steps, all official correspondence for students after they're accepted will be sent to the student's DigiPen email. So you do want to keep that in mind that your DigiPen email is the one that you want to be checking once you're accepted to DigiPen. Initially, before you're admitted, we can communicate with you via your personal email if you reach out to us from that email. But after that DigiPen email is set up, that's where our official correspondence will go. So keep that in mind that you'll want to check that regularly in case we have any follow-up questions or if there's any issues with your FAFSA or any questions we have about the additional documentation you're assigned. Again, all of that will go to your DigiPen email, so you'll want to be sure to keep an eye on that. All right, so digging a little deeper into the FAFSA is an acronym that stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So this is an annual application. You reapply every year for this. We recommend that students apply early for the FAFSA to be evaluated for the greatest amount of aid for the year. October 1st is FAFSA opening day, so that's a big day for financial aid. And again, because it's an annual application that needs to be filled out, we recommend put that on a calendar somewhere, add a reminder each year for October 1st that that is when you will want to go in and fill out your FAFSA. You don't have to do it on October 1st. You can do it anytime during the year after that as well. But again, applying early will get you that earliest initial aid offer as well. So studentaid.gov is the website where you can go to submit that FAFSA. Couple of things about filling out the FAFSA. First thing you'll need to do is create what's called an FSA ID. And this is essentially your login information that will allow you to access the FAFSA information, submit that initial information on the FAFSA. If you need to make any edits to your FAFSA, you'll need that FSA ID information to log back in. And of course, each year, as you're submitting your FAFSA, you'll need that FSA ID information to log back in for the FAFSA year each year as well. So make sure once you complete your FSA ID, once you have that set up, that you keep track of, you write down that information somewhere, keep it handy, put it in if you use an app to store your passwords and things like that, add your FSA ID to that list, and that way it's easily available if you need to go in and make any edits or as you're filling it out for future years as well. We also recommend that you gather tax documentation before applying. So the FAFSA uses what's called prior year tax information. So for instance, for the 2026-27 FAFSA, it will use 2024 tax and income information. So you'll want to make sure that you have tax documentation readily available to reference as you're filling out the FAFSA, as it will ask you some questions about that data, and you'll need to enter some of that. Now, one caveat to that I will add is that if you opt into it on the FAFSA, there is a feature called the FADDX that connects to the IRS. And so if you opt in to use that FADDX feature, it can automatically pull a lot of your tax and income information from the IRS system and populate it in your FAFSA. So it will save you time if you opt into that. It will bring over a lot of that information for you. But there are still some fields, even with using that feature, that will need to manually be entered. So you'll still want to gather those tax documents either way, but the FADDX can make that process a little bit faster. And then, of course, follow all directions on the FAFSA carefully. So some common mistakes we see are student information being entered in the parent section of the FAFSA or vice versa. So the first portion of the FAFSA is the student section. The student starts the application, puts the student information in that section. Then the application is sent on to the parent or contributor to complete the parent section. So just be sure you're paying attention when you're filling out the application to make sure that student information is going in the student portion, parent information in the parent portion. If you do make a mistake and put it in the wrong section, it's not the end of the world. You can go back in and edit it. But again, it just saves you time down the road if you're making sure that you're in the right section for that information. And then another common error that we see is typos or errors in the social security numbers that are entered on the FAFSA or the birth dates. So keep in mind to double check those before you submit the FAFSA as well. The social security numbers and the birth dates are really crucial pieces of data that allow the FAFSA to match in our system with the student who's in our system. And so if those are incorrect, again, it'll just slow down the process. It can be fixed, it can be resolved, but to expedite the process, if those are all accurate from the beginning, that will help just make everything go a little bit more smoothly. All right, so some terminology that you will see around, maybe you've already seen it on our website, maybe you're already familiar with this concept of cost of attendance. But when we're talking about cost of attendance, I do want to focus a little bit on what we're talking about around that concept. So essentially, there are two different categories of costs under the umbrella of the cost of attendance. So first we have direct costs. These are fixed amounts that are paid directly to the school, so things like tuition and fees. And then the other category is indirect costs. So indirect costs are estimates of what it can cost to be a college student in our geographic area. Each year when we bill the cost of attendance for the year, we do some research on cost of living in the area to make sure that these estimates are as accurate as possible. So, of course, your exact cost for these different indirect cost categories may not exactly line up with the number amount that's in the cost of attendance. And these indirect costs are also not going to be paid directly to the school necessarily, but they can be helpful when you're building out your budget. You can use it for reference to give you an idea of what those costs may look like. So some examples of indirect costs would be things like housing, books and supplies, transportation, things like that. And then another reason that the cost of attendance is important to understand is because it is essentially the ceiling, the limit of how much financial aid a student can be awarded for the year. So it's the most financial aid a student can accept and use to pay for these direct and indirect costs. So keep that in mind as you're planning as well. That cost of attendance limit can come into play at times depending on what forms of financial aid the student is awarded. All right, so specifically looking at the cost of attendance at DigiPen, this is for the 2026-27 annual cost of attendance. So our annual cost of attendance for 26-27 is $69,926. Now again, this is including direct and indirect costs, so this is not all going to be paid directly to DigiPen, and your exact amounts for some of those indirect categories may vary. But let's look at the breakdown for each of these components. So tuition and fees is those primary direct costs that will be paid to DigiPen. Tuition that we have projected here is based on the assumption that the student will be enrolled in at least 15 credits per semester. The reason that we build our cost of attendance around that assumption is because at DigiPen we offer a flat rate credit cost at DigiPen. So if students are enrolled in at least 15 credits, they are charged that flat rate amount for tuition each semester, which is a better deal than the per credit amount that is for students who are enrolled in fewer credits than that. So the 15 plus credits is also going to keep them on track to graduate on time. So that's why we're highlighting kind of that level of enrollment here. Tuition and fees, again, those are the direct costs. That is what would be paid to DigiPen, assuming that is the student's enrollment level. And then the other components that we have listed here, housing and food, loan fees, transportation, books and supplies, laptop, software costs, and personal expenses are going to be those indirect costs that are not necessarily paid to DigiPen directly. But when you're making your budget for planning for college, you'll want to make sure that you have these components factored into your budget somewhere. And the number can be based on your specific situation as well. All right, so I know that number, those costs on the previous slide may have given a little bit of sticker shock. Keep in mind that that cost of attendance is before financial aid is applied. So next we're going to look at some options for financial aid to help cover that cost of attendance. So these are the types of financial aid that are available at DigiPen. So first we have the federal aid category that includes the Pell Grant, FSEOG, Federal Work Study, direct student subsidized and unsubsidized loans, and the Parent Plus loan. And students are automatically evaluated for all of the federal aid listed here based on their FAFSA that they fill out for the year. And apart from the Parent Plus loan, which has a separate application that the parent can submit if they decide to pursue that option. Then we also have institutional aid, so Merit Scholarship, Bridge Scholarship, Dragon Opportunity Scholarship, Jim Johnson Scholarship, and many more that are listed on our website. And we'll dig in a little bit deeper to some of these specific scholarships and the amounts and things like that in the next couple of slides. And then in the other category, we also have Washington State aid, private loans are an option, veteran benefits for eligible students, tuition benefits for students and parents, and outside scholarships are all accepted at DigiPen as well. All right, so looking a little bit closer at some of our scholarship options. First, we'll start with the DigiPen Merit Scholarship. So this scholarship is up to $13,000 per year for incoming freshmen for the 26-27 year. The exact amount of this will depend on the student's program and the assessment of their application. That assessment happens automatically shortly after the student is admitted. So selected students will automatically be awarded the scholarship if they are selected. And then if the student receives the President's Technology Scholarship, which we'll look at on the next slide, it will replace this Merit Scholarship since both the DigiPen Merit Scholarship and the President's Technology Merit Scholarship are both merit scholarships. The student would receive the President's Technology Scholarship instead. And the President's Technology Scholarship is a larger amount as well, so it's the better deal of the two. All right, so next we'll focus in a little bit more on some specific scholarships for our WANIC Skill Center students. So first, that President's Technology Academy Merit Scholarship that I mentioned. This scholarship is 50% off the first year's tuition amount per year for up to 4 years. So the amount is calculated based off of the first year tuition, but then it is a 4-year scholarship total. And again, students are only eligible for one merit scholarship. So if they're awarded both the merit scholarship and the President's Technology Academy merit scholarship, then the President's Technology Scholarship would replace that other merit scholarship. And both WANIC students and I know we have some New Market Skill Center students as well. Just so you know, you're also eligible to be evaluated for the scholarship as well. Next, we have the WANIC Scholarship. So this is awarded to students taking the same class at DigiPen that they successfully completed through the WANIC program. This WANIC Scholarship is for the first year of enrollment only. And then lastly, we have the pre-college scholarship, and this is awarded to students one time who've successfully completed a summer pre-college course through the Open World program. This scholarship is the amount paid for the most recent academy course taken, and it is for that incoming semester only. So, of course, the President's Technology Academy Merit Scholarship is the big scholarship here, but the WANIC Scholarship and the pre-college scholarship are great options as well. Okay, next I want to look a little bit at a tool that can be really helpful as you're exploring your options for financial aid and making a plan for what your cost of attendance may look like. This is really helpful early in the cycle, especially if you haven't been admitted to DigiPen just yet. The net price calculator, which you can find on our website at digipen.edu/NPC, is essentially a tool that can estimate costs based on the information that's provided. So it's kind of like a very simplified admissions application evaluation plus a very simplified FAFSA to generate what your aid eligibility may look like at DigiPen. I do emphasize that it's only going to give an estimate. It's not going to be considered your finalized aid offer. But again, when you're early in the cycle, you're just trying to make a determination of what your aid may look like at DigiPen. This can be a really helpful tool to get some more information on that. So if you go in to fill out the net price calculator, you will be prompted to provide some student academic information, some family information, and some financial data. And so if we go to the next slide, we can look at what these different sections look like. So we have the student information section, the student academic information section, which will ask for things like GPA or SAT scores, things like that. And again, those SAT scores, as mentioned earlier, are optional. So if you don't have those, you can just plug in the GPA. Next, it will ask for family information. So that includes number of people in the household, parents' marital status, details like that. Supplemental information to evaluate what other programs the student may qualify for financial aid. And then the last section will ask for some financial data. So you can choose to not provide financial data if you prefer. The thing to keep in mind for that is that the results that the net price calculator is going to generate are only as good and as specific as the information that's provided. And so if you choose not to provide financial data, your eligibility, your net price will be estimated using average information for your family size rather than information that's specific to your financial data. So eligibility for need-based aid and things like that will be a lot more accurate and a lot more specific if you can provide some financial data. But it's totally up to you how you want to use this tool. Just keep that in mind, that depending on how specific you want the results to be, the more information you can provide, the more specific the results will be to your situation. So then this is an example of what the results of the net price calculator will generate. Right now, I will highlight that the net price calculator is up to date for the 2026-27 academic year. So if you're considering applying for DigiPen for that year, or if you've already applied and you still want to use this tool, keep in mind that the numbers that it's going to generate are based on that 2026-27 year. If you're planning to come to DigiPen in a year after that, you're more than welcome to still use this tool. You can run this multiple times on the website if you want to run different scenarios. If you're not sure exactly what your final GPA will be or what your income might be in that future year, you can run it now and run it later. But just keep in mind right now, the numbers it's going to generate are for 26-27, closer to the start of the 27-28 year and so forth. Will update this to reflect those years as well. But right now it's up to date for 26-27. So looking at these results, it will show you the estimated direct cost of attendance for the year, so tuition and fees. It will show you estimated grants and scholarships for the year, loan options, work options like work study or student employment, and additional loan options after that as well. And then on the right-hand side, we have the net price estimate. So that's taking all of the pieces and putting them together. It's got the cost of attendance at the top there. Again, those same components that we looked at on the previous slide are factoring in to that cost of attendance there. And then the estimated grants and scholarships to pay for college, that's based on that financial information a lot of times. I should say, for most of these programs, that's based on the financial information that's provided. And so it's going to include those estimates there, and then it will spit out the estimated net price at the end there. Now, I do also want to point out that when you run this calculation, it's also going to give you other options at the very end there on the right-hand side. And so if you're looking at this net price and you're seeing that, it's still looking a little higher than you'd like, or you're not sure how you're going to be able to afford that potential net price, there are those additional options listed below, like additional loan options, more scholarships that the student could apply for that aren't automatically going to be calculated here as part of the net price calculator. So if you have any questions, also this can be a good starting place for kind of getting a net price estimate. But then if you have questions that come out of running this net price estimate calculation, this would be a great thing to bring to an appointment with our office if you want to kind of go through this together and talk about those additional options, talk about covering that remaining cost, things like that. That's definitely something that our office can help with. So, or if you want to meet with us and run the net price calculator together, that's definitely something we can do. So however you want to use that, that's totally up to you, but this is a tool that's available to you to help you, especially in those early phases of planning before you're admitted to DigiPen, before you have that official initial aid offer from our office. You can definitely use this tool. And again, feel free to run it as many times as you want and use it however it's helpful. All right, and lastly, I want to leave you with a few items to consider. So, enrollment status and the amount of credits affect financial aid. And what we mean by that is that if all financial aid is essentially initially awarded, based on the assumption that a student will be enrolled full-time amount of credits for that semester. So if a student ends up being enrolled in fewer than 12 credits for a semester, their aid will be prorated to a lesser amount in most cases for most programs. So do keep that in mind as you're making plans as well. If a student's planning to attend attend DigiPen part-time rather than full-time, that would be a good conversation to have with our office so we can talk you through what the aid will look like in that scenario. Another thing I want to highlight here that will impact potentially the aid amount a student will be eligible for is that federal and state financial aid can only be used for a student's classes that are within their degree program. So if there's a class that a student's really excited about taking, they could take that class, but if it's not in their degree program, then federal and state financial aid cannot be used for that class specifically. So that's something that probably is later in the process to consider, but just a good thing to keep in mind as you're planning for that as well. And then, of course, we recommend families have a financial plan for all 4 years rather than just the first year. We know that that's a lot of planning and there can be a lot of unknowns in making a plan for future years, but that is something, again, that we're more than happy to meet with you about if you have any questions about how to do that or what information we can provide to help you plan for all 4 years rather than the first year. That would be something we can definitely meet with you for, and I will, on the next slide, I have the link for making an appointment with our office if anybody would like to make an appointment for questions like that. And next recommendation is to only borrow what is needed. So, of course, loans do have to be paid back with interest. Loans can be a great tool to help bridge the gap after grants and scholarships are applied. If you need to borrow some loans to make DigiPen affordable, then that can be a great option to supplement. But if you have any questions about how do I make borrowing loans feasible, how do I make sure that repayment is going to be doable after graduation, things like that are also questions that we are can definitely help with. There are some good tools out there to help break down what repayment may look like and questions around that topic. So let us know if you have questions about that as well. And then if your financial situation has changed, please also let us know that as well. It may be that you could qualify for an appeal situation to help you qualify for additional aid. If your financial situation isn't reflected on the FAFSA and you've had a major change in income or super high medical costs or something like that, those are things that we can definitely talk through with you as well and make sure that you're aware of all your options. And then communicate with us when you have questions. So this is a street that goes both ways. Please let us know if you have any questions anywhere along the way. We're always happy to help with those questions. We know that sometimes financial aid can be overwhelming, especially if it's a new topic for you or if, there've just been a lot of changes in the past few years, honestly, with financial aid as well. And so if you need any help navigating those, or have any concerns about financial aid or things that you've seen in the news, if you need some help like interpreting, does that apply to DigiPen? Does that apply to my student? What does this mean for our student? That's definitely information that we can talk through with you as well. And then again, I'm just going to highlight here at the end, like I did at the beginning, make sure you're checking your DigiPen email as well. So we want you to reach out to us. We're also going to reach out to you if we have any questions. Again, with reminders about if we need additional documentation, if we have any questions about your FAFSA, things like that. So make sure that once that DigiPen email is set up, that you're keeping an eye on that as well. All right, and then on that same topic, this is our contact information. So if you want to reach out at any point, feel free to reach out, email, phone. We offer one-on-one virtual and in-person appointments. You can go to calendly.com/DITFAID and make a virtual appointment or an in-person appointment there for any of these questions or any other questions that we didn't cover here that you still have remaining. Anywhere along the process, feel free to meet with us early on or once you're admitted or after classes have started at any point. That's what our office is here for.